welcome to another WeAreDevelopers Live. It's Friday again. No, it's Wednesday. What am I talking about? It's Wednesday again, and we're going to be talking for about an hour. And then we're going to have a special guest this time. We're going to have two guests. We have one person coming in and looking with joining us to look at links and actually talk about some resources and what they've done lately. And we're going to have a presentation coming right after this from our partners. So it's the partner NDT, and they're going to talk about some very interesting topics in terms of what it means to be front end and back end in desktop applications. I'm not quite sure what that actually is, but I'm very excited to see it happening. So that's going to be in an hour. And we're going to introduce the speaker afterwards. But first of all, we got Dan here. How are you doing today, Dan?
I'm very well. The sun's out for once. It seems like a long time since I've actually seen it. So yeah, it definitely puts me in a good mood. You know, we haven't had the sun here for, it feels like 9 months. So yeah, looking forward to today's show as well. A bit of an extended show, and yeah, it's going to be good.
England, it's like sun for like 3 minutes, 5 or something, or
yeah, pretty much.
Probably enough for everybody to take their shirt off and show their bulldog tattoos. So that's always the thing.
That's it, you know, and you've got to show quite how red you are. You know, I think I'm doing quite well already, and it's only March, so we'll see how I look at the end of July. But yeah, love it. Really, really, definitely, it changes everybody's mood. I don't know if it's like that in the rest of Europe, but you really notice it when the sun's out here.
Yeah, it's a lovely feeling. It's like outside of the balcony with your laptop when the sun is shining and you can't see anything. It's a different issue, but just go outside and don't do computer things for a change. So that might be fun. But saying that, we have a guest today as well who's going to look at some computer things with us. So I want to bring on stage Louise Fraze. Hello, Louise. How are you doing?
Doing fine.
Oh, you're an MVP, aren't you? Got the sign standing in the background.
Yes,
and like...
I am. There's the sign in the background indicating that. Yeah, Microsoft things. I'm doing a good job and just like promoting technical leadership and solutions and engaging with community and answering questions and writing a lot of blog posts and speaking on stage and online and be everywhere.
Nice. So how long have you been doing that, and what is your special subject matter?
So I've been doing this now for 6 years. Also, I'm awarded as an MVP since 6 years and counting. So hope to get renewed in July as well. What I do, I'm a software architect. I work primarily in the Microsoft ecosystem that includes 3 clouds, which is M365. Most of you will know that, Power Platform and Azure. And these days, it also includes, of course, a lot of AI, because as we all know, AI is the solution to all of our problems. At least this is what my customers get. So yeah, they want automation, but with a sprinkle of AI. So they get exactly that.
It felt really weird when, like, I mean, I love when Copilot came out in GitHub and VS Code, and then Microsoft took on the Copilot word and put it everywhere. Like, we have it in Edge, we have it in the operating system, we have it inside the Power Platform, we have it inside, I guess, Office as well. So do you think there is like a war of the agents coming up, that we actually have like 15 things that want to interact with us while we're just trying to type a text?
Well, so first, you can disable those, which is quite nice, because even Microsoft put out a study that just like investigated how are all of these copilots and similar tools like all the Gen AI stuff, how's that impacting our work and our creativity, and how much and to which degree are we able to still think, again, processing things as a human being. And while it is nice to have such an AI companion, not to just like stress the Copilot words too much, our ability to really think things through, that declines when we use these tools more than we should. And more than we should is just like a very well, we can't really define what that is, but if you over rely on such tools just because you want to write an email, you need to get presentation out, or if you want to code and you can't do this without AI, I mean, vibe coding, right? So no, we shouldn't do that. So I see it like, if you can't validate nor verify what a Copilot tells you what the thing is, then you shouldn't be trusting it.
And it becomes
using
so
them.
formulaic, you know, like I hope this email finds you well. I hope this email finds you walking into a lake. Because it's just like, it's just the same things over and over again. It's just really bizarre.
Yes, it is. But then the problem in the first place is, why are we as humans writing, I hope this email finds you well? Never, ever an email ad found me well. I mean, I'm just like, I hope this email will kill us both because I hate triaging emails. This is what I think about that. So the problem in the first place is that humans behave like idiots in the workplace. And I'm part of that, of course, as well. And then, of course, we feed this data into the model that is grounded that, and then all of the stuff that Copilot puts out is, I hope this email finds you well. And we're like, wow, why is it so overcomplicated? And then we advise it, yeah, can you write it this shorter or more casual or more whatever? But the root of the cause was that we behave like that. So we need to change the way we work. And then AI can follow, but AI will not change the work for us. This is not going to work.
I wonder if though it is changing how we think, right? Because a friend of mine, he's got quite bad dyslexia, and you know, he can communicate verbally really well, but when it comes to writing it down, it can take him a little while. And he and his company, he messaged the other people in his company and said, if you get an email from me and it reads like it's written with AI, it is, and that I know it doesn't sound like me, but it's just going to get the job done. And that, you know, if they're emailing anyone externally, he will write it himself in his own voice, and he'll kind of use AI a bit more to naturalize it. But he's effectively said, like, look, you're going to get all of this AI kind of junk in the email, and it just helps me do it quicker. So I wonder if, just to be devil's advocate, maybe it is changing how we work, and it might be that AI is leading the way rather than the other way around.
I guess it will be a back and forth. So it is not that one is the cause and the other one is the effect, but both are just like dependent on each other at various times. So I guess this is just like more of a complex issue instead of just like only being complicated, just like on several levels and just like depending on each other. And I can't talk without my hands, so sorry. But when it comes just like to enabling people and caring about accessibility issues, for example, so just like your colleague with dyslexia, or if I have other issues that I need to combat, of course, there is just like a lot of technology, AI included, that can help with that. And then, of course, it is greatly appreciated. It just like shouldn't be the standard that one bot just like blows up the former 2 lines that I had just like a very, very long email, and the other bot on the other side there needs to summarize this very long email again so that I get just like 2 bullet points out of it, because never ever anyone has won with that.
Yeah, I think it's also the way it actually then gets archived and makes it searchable and these kind of things. I guess that's where the normal two word emails that we send each other wouldn't help with that. But yeah, it's a tricky one. So you've been moderating at our Congress as well last year. How was that as an experience?
Moderating is great because you just like see so many cool speakers on stages where you feel like, wow, that is seriously not my core expertise, but obviously you learn so much, and then you get in touch with so many cool speakers and panels. So this is a really great experience, and obviously it's nice just like to see the audience over the course of a day or half of a day and how they change or if they stay. So there were just like people who just like stayed at the very same seat for the entire day and only just like walked out to grab a coffee or something like that. So it's a great experience. I loved it.
It's always fun when you're with other speakers. Oftentimes, when I remember when we flew to America for a talk, and you do it for one day, and you come with other people from the UK, and you give your talk, and your friends speakers sit in the first row and fall asleep, and it's not because of your talk, but because of jet lag. That was always the thing that cracked me up. How many times I've seen speakers at events sleeping in the audience because they just couldn't hack it any longer.
Yeah, so I try not to do this, and I try to only attend conferences on that day where I already feel rested, but that sometimes means just like, just like having an additional day, just like for traveling, or just like to recover from jet lag. But yes, supporting friends and just like sitting in front row and just like nodding all the time, like, yes, you're right. So that the speaker may feel confident. Maybe it's a newbie speaker. So that is just like a really great way to encourage someone. And then, of course, rooting for them and cheering for them and clapping when they said something super smart, and obviously that is the case.
I remember one time it was a friend of mine who was like very professional, because I found one of those rubber horse heads, that were like fashionable for some time. And I sat in the first row with that horse head on and was stroking my chin all the time, pretending to think about what he's saying. And he was just not having it. It was just like great. He kept his pace, he kept his thing. It was just wonderful.
Great. Love it.
So the first thing would be right down your alley, I think. It's the opt-out project. So that is basically, people have been thinking about getting more and more out of social media and actually disconnected from the rat race of like competing with your own social media platforms. And there's like the guides for like the basics, how to get out of that. And then there's what the opt-out project is about, and techniques to actually disconnect or wean yourself off social media. Now, you just left almost every platform, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. So as a political...
without bringing any lawyers into the space, why did you do that?
Oh my God. Beep. No, I wouldn't say all of that. It's the redacted, but due to political reasons, because I didn't agree with just like the stuff that is happening in the world, let's phrase it very, very loosely, and to support the right causes, I dropped off from Twitter, and also Threads and Instagram and WhatsApp. And also I deleted Prime and Audible, and more will follow, because I wanted to just like stand by my own values and fight for what's right for me. And I realized that this is not as easy for everyone as it is for me, because if I make a decision like, oh, I don't want that, then for me, it is just like super easy to execute what is needed to achieve that. But also I know that some people might feel like some discomfort, which is like making big decisions, like, oh my God, I have so many followers there, or all my friends are here, or something like that. But for me, it just like felt right. So I did so, and thing is, I don't miss it. After 2 weeks, I don't miss it anymore. And I think that social media platforms, regardless who owns them and which approach they follow, they are designed to make you addicted to them. So they want us to spend just like as much time as we have on them. And they use just like a lot of things to make sure that this actually happens. But if you break this cycle, that actually frees up time, and now I have time to do more coding and more side projects, which is lovely. And that connects me to the right people as well. So I just like shifted that.
It's a very good point. I mean, when you do DevRel or you do like side projects, you kind of feel like you're dependent on social media as a multiplier to get people's eyeballs on it and to actually get people to play with it. And I mean, when you have a huge amount of followers, it feels really hard to say like, okay, I'm not going to use that any longer because I disagree with it. I wrote a blog post about it as well, because the other side of it is, of course, like if you're disagreeing politically with an environment, and you leave it to the people that you're disagreeing with. Like it becomes an echo chamber for those people as well. And I find it very weird with some of them, because the media keeps looking at them as well, like the TV and radio, and you keep seeing people quoting out of that one. I mean, I remember when a blog post was not meant as a resource, but now somebody says something on social media and it becomes a news item, and you're like, this is not really any official release or any official information, but it feels like that the convenience of the multiplication is something that you will miss most. But then again, I found, for example, getting to LinkedIn right now gives me the same thing, and in the end, it's an email. The email is the thing that when I have that from somebody, and my emails haven't changed in like 25 years or so. This is basically the place where you can contact people. And now it feels weird when I invite people for this, for example, or for Coffee with Developers. Where do you reach them? You can go to like 5 different channels and ping them. And in the end, the email is the best way of getting somebody, I guess. Unless it's people like you who don't like triaging email.
Yeah, well, and I know that I'm totally alone with that. I know that everyone else, of course, likes to be triaging their emails for hours every single day. But to sarcasm, but I should emphasize what you said, because yes, LinkedIn is one of the places where I find my peers. So previously, when Twitter was still Twitter and not this hate machine that it is now, I thought that LinkedIn is boring and that there are only just like the uncool people. And then I realized I was confusing cause and effect because I wasn't there, because my peers weren't there. It was boring and only the uncool people were there. So by just like being there, you can just like make actually every place like a little bit more cool, at least. And the second thing is, yes, email is a good way to reach people. LinkedIn is as well, because you can search for just like their actual name instead of some random characters that they throw together, which is then their nickname on social media, because their name is a big secret. And yes, currently we have just like a lot of channels where we could reach people. I think this will narrow down again at some point. So this comes and goes in waves. And yes, it was not as easy to leave just like all the followers that I had, but I realized this is not worth it. Totally not.
I mean, it's also annoying that LinkedIn has these like growth hackers in there as well, and there's like very obvious posts to engagement farming kind of stuff. But yeah, it's a good. Whoops, we lost her. Yeah, so the engagement farmers on LinkedIn is one thing that kind of puts me off, but I think that's just a matter of what you have to do.
Yeah.
So,
and if we can avoid it, really, it's just the nature of it, isn't it? If currency is attention, or if attention is currency, then people will always do it, won't they? Just to get any kind of attention. And I think there is something to be said for some people that there's no. It's like at least you're talking about me. Is kind of the philosophy, you know. Love me or hate me, at least you're talking about me. Is kind of what I see on any social media platform. I think you'll always have people who do that. But anyway, while we wait for Louise to come back, should we have a look at that second resource?
I think that's a very interesting one. The Wayback Machine is something I love to bits. It basically archived internet pages for a long time. That was the wrong button, wasn't it, Louise?
No, there was no button, in fact, but my internet provider didn't like me anymore.
Okay, that's because you're not on social media talking about them.
Yeah, they were listening, you know, just to throw in some conspiracy theories.
No, nobody's listening. Like we already went to the next resource, which is the Save Page Now thing from the Wayback Machine.
Yeah.
A Wayback Machine from archive.org is something that I love to bits because I find websites that I built in 1997, 1998 that I only have on like CDs that can't be read any longer at home. And the server doesn't exist any longer, but they archived everything. Google Cache was another thing in the past, but now it's not existing anymore. And they're actually pointing to the Wayback Machine of Internet Archive as well. And they just basically released just web.archive.org save, and you can enter your URL there, or you have like different browser extensions that actually allow you to say like, this is a really cool resource. We don't want it to go away. Please archive that. And it's great because, I mean, you could never do that with Googlebot or with Bingbot and say like, please archive this, but it's basically an effective way to get content of the web like saved for the next generations, because I think there is a lot of stuff being deleted right now for the sake of like immediate interaction and also political statements sometimes. So this is a great way to actually counteract that. And I think Internet Archive do a really, really good job with that. I remember I was there like decades ago, like in San Francisco in their office when they showed me like there was one desktop machine and they're like, that's the internet from 1996. There's like all the websites that were on this one machine basically, but I don't even know what they're actually using for storage now, but it must be pretty impressive. And it's quite cool to see what they index randomly. But this is a great way for anybody out there who wants to do some digital archivism just go to that page, enter that URL, or do the, install an extension and just save any website that you find, so they can bring it to the people in the future as well. So I think it's a very nice thing to do.
I feel like it goes beyond just being internet knowledge. It says at the bottom, you know, every page saved is a step towards ensuring the internet's knowledge remains available. I feel like it's a form of history. Just because it's online and it's digital, it's not less important. I think this is really important, that we do archive this and we take these kind of timestamps of how things were, whether it's someone's silly little website or it is a big government website. I think it's really, really important. So I love that they're doing it with like crowdsourcing as well, you know, getting everyone involved. And just before we move on, was it bots before then? Was it just crawlers and bots? Is that how they did it? There was nobody manually doing any of this?
I think it was a crawler, yeah. But you could also send it in. I mean, I guess they also ingested things like the DMOS before that, which was like before search engines. It was basically as where you can say, I've got a blog here or I've got a website here. So the DMOZ archive was basically a big thing in like 97, 98. And then basically, then search engines came around, and actually the live search engines, the first ones. Before that, we had like the catalogs, like web.de in Germany or yahoo.com in America, where you basically had directories where you could submit a website and they would vet it and then list it there. And then crawlers came around, and yeah, it was interesting to see that change as well. I remember there was a Firebot, it was called. The German search engine was the first one that showed live results, what other people were searching for. And that is so not a good idea. It was just like the most outrageous things that you saw people searching. And it was just interesting to say the least. So, yeah.
And all the kids are now, what? What is he just like talking about? So thank you for this history lesson. This is great.
It was great though, because if you had your website in DMOS, it was basically SEO gold for years and years to come. Like basically, I had mine indexed in I think 1998, and until 2005, 2006, people were just like contacting me with that email that I had there, because I had like an email redirect to know where people come from. So it was really interesting to see that kind of stuff, that these things don't die.
So you were one of the OGs, so to say.
Well, yesterday I was at Stör Publishing in Berlin and gave a talk about accessibility, and they're the people that do T-Online, which is like the biggest news portal in Germany from the long ago. And we're going to have a coffee with developers with them as well, because they still have 30% Firefox users, with like million users a minute. And it was basically because the T-Online browser that came with the CD-ROM and then on DVDs was basically Firefox based, and people got stuck with that thing. And yeah, it was interesting to see that these things are still existing. And I had a great talk yesterday about accessibility there, and then like how it interacts with like when you make the website perfectly accessible, and then you basically get like an ad by a car company taking over the whole screen and showing five concurrent videos, and people are just like, okay, what's going on now? Now, a categorical archive for ChatGPT failures is basically listing all the things where ChatGPT did some very, very wrong things. I haven't looked at it myself in detail. Dan, have you taken a glance in that one?
Yeah, I took a look. It does go sort of quite technical. I went straight to the wit and humor one. You know, being British and believing that we are the funniest country on earth, which isn't true. I went straight to that, and I thought, because that's something I feel that AI will never really be able to replace. Like, humor is such a nuanced, complex, like timing related, you know, there's so much to it. And I think it was a great example actually of how yes, it can fail with things like logic, and you feel like it will get better at those, like reasoning and things like this. But I still feel that there are some areas of like the human existence that you can simulate, but you can't really you know, actually kind of copy, if you like. So yeah, I thought it was really interesting, and it does compare a few, you know, it kind of mentions different models. And we had an article on our own magazine a few sort of, I think it was a couple of months ago now, where we just did a basic comparison of things like DeepSeek to ChatGPT, and you can see that they've all got different strengths. Like some are designed more for sort of reasoning rather than say Midjourney, which is like creative. So it doesn't surprise me though, but it's kind of embarrassing when you look at these, how some of them are, if you were a human, you would think these through in a very logical way and you would get there more slowly, but you would get the right response. whereas ChatGPT very quickly gets the wrong response, but is very confident with it. And I think that just sums it up. Confidence in being wrong.
So I think there is another article that we'll cover today that talks about that the confidence that an LLM has about its wrong answer, and that the accuracy of that answer, so that it, in fact, it's just like it is wrong, that does not have any correlation. So usually ChatGPT and its consorts are just like very confident on being very, very wrong. And same applies to being correct, because obviously if they were always wrong, we wouldn't use them. So they're, to a degree, of course, they do help, and they give us value, but obviously it's not always, which is why I say if you can't validate it yourself, then you need to ask another expert. And then the question is if that gives you such of a head start that you should be using that. So if you can't validate yourself, because maybe it tells you something and you're just like, yeah, I should totally copy that into my strategy paper or into my code, and then code isn't working, or the strategy paper will not convince anyone. So it is a good idea to only ask the things that you can validate.
It's interesting that when it comes to like science fiction movies and you have like androids there, they always like witty and like cynical and sarcastic, you know, like you got like in like Rogue One, you had like that character by Alan Tudyk that was just beautifully done and was just like, and you're like, why would I create this? But I catch myself not using LLMs much, because you have to be a very strict teacher to them. Like you have to tell them you are this and that, don't tell me this and that, don't do this and that. And I'm like, I don't do that with people. So I feel bad doing that to a machine as well. And I even more, I find it a waste of my time. If I have to force the machine with like commands, human commands to do things, I'd rather teach my dog a new trick. You know, this feels like wasted time.
I get your points, but obviously we do the very same thing in human interaction as well, just that we do this not explicitly but implicitly. So it is implicit that you will not yell for no reason if you're in a public space. And you know that because you were raised like this, meaning your parents, your teachers, the people in the kindergarten, just like everyone taught you that this is the way on how to behave in a public space, for example. So it is already implied. So the lesson is already taught, just that no one needs to tell you that every single day or on every single interaction, because you do have memory, and usually the chatbot doesn't. So we always need to just like feed that into the next cycle as well. But yeah, and you need to be very, very, very specific. I usually tell people, yeah, it's like talking to a 3-year-old. Yes, you will go upstairs, you will brush your teeth with your own toothbrush. After that, you will go to bed. Yes, in your own bed. No, you would just like, so all of these things. And I know, Dan, you have just like a little one at home. So that will just like soon become the norm, and where you just like tell the things first explicitly, and at some point you expect them implicitly. So you will not tell the 12-year-old the same thing.
I think the memory is a good point. Like if you use a system like ChatGPT, there is no memory. You always start from scratch. Whereas like if you use an own device, an own model on your own machine with a RAG in front of it, you actually, you teach it and it becomes your Tamagotchi. You basically make it a better model, and you don't have to repeat the same things over and over again. But with a copilot or something that is not logged in, or you're not logged into it, you actually will not have that. And that's the problem there as well. This coding assistant that actually refused to tell people to write code and tells them to learn programming instead.
Love it.
Cursor,
Love it.
And it's with a limit of 800 logs. I would love this to be just honesty. You're like, no, I'm actually terrible at that, so learn it either. But I guess it was an upsell. You know, it was like, oh, I cannot do that. You have to sign up to the next tier or something. But I'm not quite sure what it was. But I hate that none of these LLMs say when they don't know. They just give you random stuff instead. But this seems to be like a very interesting change in that environment.
Yeah. So I think that the fact that all of these LLMs will never admit, sorry, man, I don't know, unless you prompt them to do so. And also then it doesn't really work reliably, or not over just like a course of messages in the same chat. It's just like a direct reflection of the culture that we live in, and therefore of the underlying data that we feed these models with. Because usually not knowing something, that is nothing that people admit. And therefore, I don't know is nothing that we find in the data. And if it's not in the data, so it's shit in, shit out. Which means that this problem of hallucinating, that is just like baked into the system. That is nothing that we will ever will resolve, in my opinion.
It's a bit like Stack Overflow answers. People just basically commented to get like karma points, even if it didn't make any sense what they said, or just like, I have that problem too, and you're like, excellent, thank you for wasting my time. But it's interesting that this. I hope it wasn't because of more than 800 lines of code, or it was just like okay, an honesty moment for the first LLM. That would be fun.
Finally, they could have actually broken through the Dunning-Kruger effects, because I feel like that's quite a big thing, that if they can break through the Dunning-Kruger effect, where it's like the less that it knows, the more confident it is in its own beliefs. Like if they can, like you say, bake it in some ways, that feels like that could be a massive thing, where if it's just baked in, that if it doesn't know, or it will give you some measurement of its understanding. Like, I've got a very loose understanding of this, and I would encourage you go and look elsewhere. Just something as simple as that would be a really good sort of guardrail across, against people just going, well, look, ChatGPT told me it, so it's true, when you could Google search and find the exact correct answer that's totally different in 2 seconds, even though the AI is supposed to use AI search. I don't understand how it's getting it wrong.
I think this also comes down to teach people more digital literacy. Like, when would you just like use a search engine such as Google? And when would you use a tool such as ChatGPT to find the right answer to your problem? And most probably a combination of both, usually, all the time. Just like to fact check and to gain more or a wider angle.
Well, instead people go for community nodes, right, instead of fact checking. So that's like a self-sufficient like model that actually says like, yeah, you're right, it's actually good to do.
Yeah.
Now, Teldo, who's going to be at our event at the end of the month on the 27th, we have an AI and web dev or AI and development day. He's going to be our keynote speaker at the beginning. I work with him in Yahoo and other places. He's just a lovely chap, and he has a really good article on AI's effect on programming jobs and what it means to our future of development. And yeah, I love that. Don't worry about your job, because yeah, a lot of people are just like, oh, I gotta be like the prompt engineer right now. My old role is gone. It was a feel-good piece, and it has a lot of good information in it. I like that.
Yeah. So I guess to that question, so will I be replaceable? So my answer is always, will I be replaced? My answer is yes. If you make yourself replaceable, then obviously, if someone with no skills can just like do the very same, obviously you will be replaced, but no one does that. No one does that. So even if I'm a junior and my skills are limited, but I'm just like there to learn and to observe the others who just like know more, and to share what I know and to dig into the problems, and not just like always ask the copilot for me, but just like, if I'm eager to learn, I will provide value, and I will provide more value than a ChatGPT or Copilot or Claude or whatever, obviously.
Yeah, it gets interesting because as a developer, I was always lazy in a way that I wanted my code to actually explain itself with comments to other people, so they don't come to me and ask me anymore. And I wrote a lot of automation scripts to basically not have to do things any longer. And now and that was always through my whole career in every environment that I worked in. I always did this thing. And now we have these computer agents and LLMs to do that for us as well. So yeah, that's just the other thing. But it's a bit like you leaving social media. It frees you up to do better architecture of your code, to do like better maintenance, to do cleaning up of log files. You get more time to actually do the maintenance of your job rather than to rewrite the same bootstrap code for the 10th time. So it feels like you kind of make yourself redundant as a good developer because you want your code to do the work for you rather than you having to do it. But yeah, it's a worrying thing. But I'm looking forward to him giving the keynote and talk about more in detail about this one. So it's going to be an interesting bit to see. This was an interesting one as well, where it's like no one knows what the hell an AI agent is, and it's now the big thing. Everything is agentic. It used to be Gen AI, then it became multimodal Gen AI, and now everything is agentic AI. And apparently, I have a problem defining it as well. Is an agent a tool that represents a user that goes on the web and clicks stuff and fills out forms for me? Or what's the difference between just an LLM and an agent? Is it that interactivity that makes a thing an agent? And can I trust them?
The question with the trust, I think, and this is a comparison from a conversation that I recently had with a colleague. So what is a bot and what is an agent, and why do we need all these words, and what the hell is agentic? So the regular bot, and this can be obviously Gen AI enabled. If I ask it, hey, can I take vacation time from my job, I don't know, next Friday, it will just like, maybe it has the travel policies or the PTO policy as a knowledge source. So it will pull that and either just like link me to this source, or it will maybe open a form for me in the chat interface or in the web interface so that I can just like fill out the form myself. And the agent, especially an autonomous agent, will not only do that for me, but it will look at the team schedule and it will estimate if there is still enough coverage. So if there are still enough colleagues there, just like to do the things that need to be done next Friday. And after that, it will put my leave request into the system where it belongs, so that the right person, maybe my manager, will get an email or notification so this can be approved or not. And I guess that is just like something where most people feel, yeah, now I have just like at least a sense of what is an agent and what is just a bot.
So it feels like having a secretary that's a digital one, or like a digital assistant, office assistant kind of thing.
Yes.
Wasn't that Cortana was supposed to be that, and before that Siri, and didn't we always?
Don't spill those beans.
Okay, fair enough.
I don't know if Cortana still exists. I have no clue.
I guess it made way for the copilot, that basically, and I mean Siri still exists, and apparently I only heard negative feedback for Apple Intelligence, that it's supposed to be slow and like laggy and these kind of things, and I haven't turned it on. I haven't turned on Siri on my machines. I haven't turned on the Apple Intelligence thing because I don't see the benefit yet. I use LLMs in browser tabs. I don't install extra software for them, or I use them locally in a machine, in a local model, rather than just going online or having an app with it. So it feels odd.
Yeah, but honestly, whenever any new app thing shows up, people will tell you, well, it's slow and buggy. That is just like every software ever. So obviously, if a new thing comes out, it is not perfect. So let's talk in a year again about Siri.
I think Apple has a problem that it has such a great track record that it always is supposed to be the one to do it right the first time. So when something of theirs is not completely polished, then the backlash is much harder than when something doesn't work on, I don't know, a Huawei phone or something like that. So it feels like they had a history of integrating everything seamlessly and nicely, and it does with AI. I mean, for example, you can type a text in Spotlight, and it will find an image that has that text in the image. So it does OCR of every image without actually making a big fanfare about it. It's just basically.
I rely on OCR when searching for pictures on my phone. or even just like automatic metadata tagging, just like food or nature, or if you want to search for a specific person, I rely on that, and it's really, really very convenient. But I have no experiences so far with Apple Intelligence, so I think we got to wait a little bit more.
I love this. Posttalk actually have their cursor prompt in their open source archive, and it's basically, it starts. I mean, I can't read it right now because there's beeping on YouTube if it does, but I find that interesting. But also, what cracks me up in a lot of like more open source repositories, it's like we have more dot files than code by now, right? Like there's the .vs code, there's the .cursor, there's the .this and that. Like,
yeah. But I love this because this is just like very super specific. It is just like, well, maybe treat me as an expert is likely not going to work with the rest of that, because that assumes that this person is not an expert. But I like if people take the time to just like really construct the instructions that they want to give an LLM.
Yeah, I mean, there was also the humans.txt project, where basically instead of robots.txt for your website, you should list all the people that were working on the website over the years and have an archive of that. So I found that really cute as well. But it's that is great that basically you can actually set up the cursor rule that way, and that they publish it there. I hope it was on purpose. I hope they didn't just set their git ignore. But
I think it was on purpose. I've just had a look. They've got cursor rules for sort of several different scenarios, and what I like is that it just shows you the sort of exasperation. It's like it gets. I straight away checked the commits to see if it had come up in one go. Like, was it someone just like making a list and going, "That's annoying," and then adding to it, getting increasingly annoyed, or was it they sort of sat down and said, "What annoys us, and what can we then do in that list?" and just commit it in one go. So it was committed in sort of two goes, I think, but yeah, I love it. No moral lectures as well. Doesn't that tell you a little bit?
That is the best one to me. No, like, yes, I know this is bad, but I still need to do this because I have deadlines.
Yeah.
I just wished we had that for colleagues from time to time, like a file like that we could just point to, like, oh no, you just made you didn't keep it terse and you actually gave me a moral lecture on something that is not about that. But again, I guess that's where our education and our upbringing comes in, that we don't do that.
Yeah, Dan.
Well, actually, when I work with a new customer, I have kind of a welcoming package, and the welcoming package includes a document on how to work best with Louisa. And I just like state what I like and what I dislike and how I thrive, so that I can just like deliver the best value possible, instead of that we lose energy on things in the project that will not deliver value to the project directly. And I feel this is similar. So of course, I choose a different tone than the document that you showed earlier. So yeah, because that makes customers happy. But I feel it is a good way to, so if you don't know each other since years already, this is just like a good way to introduce yourself and to show people what you need to deliver value for them.
Well, in Microsoft, we had that Strength Finder as a necessity. Basically, it's this book about like how you learn things, what your strengths are, how you interact with other people, and it's like a 50-question course that you have to do. And then in the back end, in the company or the intranet, we basically had the listing of what the results were, so people knew how to talk to us, or that was the idea. But I think that was an interesting concept, much like when you have like neurodiverse people going like being very open about it and saying like, I might be really blunt, but that's just me, I'm sorry, and it's not insulting, I just can't do it any other way. So I think it's an interesting way of having these dot rules for each other's as interactions as well. Now, in extracting PDFs is a thing that the nightmare for data experts, and actually also for LLMs and other things as well. I still don't understand why we do use so many PDFs online, seeing how HTML and is so good in styling things nowadays. Back in the days when embedding your own font was a necessity and these kind of things. And of course, encrypting is one thing. but the amount of PDFs out there still is just nuts, and the inaccessibility of them as well is a big issue.
Yes. So the thing is, PDF is meant for printing files. So it is just like the thing we do before we print, and usually a lot of texts get written in Microsoft Word, and people assume that something that I write in Word that shouldn't be changed if it's the final version. So the really final version. So they make a PDF out of that. And then they think, okay, so this is good and it looks like intended. And I guess most people are just like not skilled to work with any other program, so that another format would result. And that is the reason why we have so many PDFs. And yes, 2-column formats are just like a special nightmare, because the LLM reads that as one line and so on and so forth. But yeah, I guess that's the reason why.
Yeah, it's an interesting bit, and the other thing, of course, is when it comes to accessibility and making sure that people can actually read your PDF. Saving and exporting it as PDF from Word is so much better than printing it to PDF, because the print to PDF basically strips out all the metadata that you actually might need to understand the thing.
Yeah. And that again comes down to digital literacy, because people don't know. We don't teach them because there's no budget, because everyone knows how to deal with Word, right? Which means there's no training. And if there is training on accessibility, it usually doesn't focus around Office products.
My former colleagues at the Edge team have a new explainer out that they want developer feedback on, which is controlling the performance of embedded web content. Very interesting for people that actually use a lot of ads on their pages, or use like YouTube embeds or these kind of things. So just as a great idea, just take a look at what the proposal is like and give them feedback, because I think there is a good opportunity to make the web a lot faster if embedded content doesn't slow you down.
I like it.
Yeah, we had that
iframes.
yesterday.
It's crazy that we're still at that point as well. Sorry, just the fact that iframes are still sort of so prevalent. It's something that just feels like such a, like, we're never going to get beyond it. And you know, I don't know if there's ever been any proposals for like completely new ways of doing these things, but it's just surprising how often like you still see them. And I don't know, it was something that I sort of thought in my head when I kind of moved away from the web for a few years. You know, I was doing more design work, and you come back and you see the iframes are still everywhere, and you think, I thought this would have gone. You know.
I remember when we needed to nest iframes so the scrubber of the page wouldn't keep loading, and that was just a real pain to get accessible as well. But let's not go back to those dirty times. There's a thing from Google that actually, or Google Search, that basically protect your personal information to easily take action on outdated content in search results. I skimmed it, and there was feedback of people like, if you were doxxed, that's the way around it. Yeah, there's the results about you page, which I don't even know. Oh, it's not supported in my region. So, okay, let's skip to the next bit. But yeah, it's an interesting thing. If you got information in Google that you don't want in there, then basically this is a way to show it and also to delete it. AI search engines fail accuracy tests. Study finds 60% error rate. We have one of those weekly by now, don't we?
Yeah. I mean, the subtitle on that is the best bit. Bump that up to 96% if it's Grok 3. And I'm pretty sure I read a document the other day, or at least no, it wasn't a document. Sorry, it was a post, but it was saying how advanced Grok was. So I think these are sort of really, really important, because they keep everyone accountable about how accurate actually are you, and you know, it proves that tests they're gonna the truth comes out in the test. You know, this is great.
So the question is, how do you test this? And if you only ask yourself, and if you validate yourself, or if you ask users and people lie, or if you just like benchmark this. So what I do to determine if I have the right model for the right job when I make applications for my customers, that is, I go to Azure AI Foundry, and then I select the models that come to mind, and I can filter those by the job they need to do, like classification or image generation or whatever. And then I run a benchmark to just like compare them. And then I can see just like which model in which category or with which attribute is just like performing in which way, and where are the drawbacks, and where I need to make maybe a compromise, because maybe one model is better than the other, but is 3 times as expensive to use. Then of course I need to talk to my customer if they still want that. But then I have just like something that is really grounded in fact, instead of just an opinion on, yeah, I feel like maybe this is advanced.
I mean, that's a knowledge piece that drives me nuts. I mean, the amount of like models out there that we can choose from right now, and knowing which one is good for what, that changes every 2 days. And there's like all kind of license issues with it as well. And it's like, I always wonder, reading through all these news pages, who does that? Is it really that like lots of millions of developers jump onto a new model when it comes out? Or is it 3 bloggers doing it and everybody else chiming in and saying like, oh, I know?
I think it's the latter, but I can't prove it.
Effort, isn't it?
I think it's the latter, but I can't prove that. And I do not want to just like insult people. So, but I hope that just like more people use benchmarks instead of opinions.
Sure. Okay, we have our next speaker coming up, and normally we would introduce him later, but I thought, why not actually have a chat with getting him in as well? So, Jérôme, oh my God, Blaise-Morin?
Yeah, Blaise-Morin. In French, Blaise-Morin, Blaise-Morin, I don't know, in English, yeah.
Excellent. How are you doing?
I'm very good. And you, yourself?
We're good. We just basically, we thought we're going to be faster in going through that, but I thought, why not get you in if you're already on stage and you're already ready for us? So you work for, where do you work and what do you do?
I'm a computer engineer. I work for a company called NDT Global. We produce robots and we operate them for to inspect pipelines. It uses ultrasonic sensors to detect cracks, loss of metal in the wall of the pipeline, and it goes from run preparation to up to, at the end we give a report to the client. They are a pipeline operator, and yeah, that's what we do at NDT Global, and I'm a team manager of a software team for that. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I mean, you're going to be talking about WPF environments and like more fat clients. We now have still a few more web things to talk about, but I think you're already familiar with those as well. And where do you feel yourself, like, in what makes you happier, like building SIG client software or building things that are on the edge?
Well, I basically only worked on desktop application my whole career, so I have very little. I modify some web app sometimes, but I'm a beginner on this side. I've just done desktop app, so I prefer this part because I know it better. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Cool. Well, one thing here is an interesting one, is navigating the web platform. Again, a former colleague of mine, Patrick Brosset, who's actually still at Microsoft Edge, I think. Who knows? But he actually talks about like all the cool stuff that you can do on the web. Like, where do you find out about browsers? What about functionality? Where's the next features coming from? And I think this is a very good resource to get started. I mean, Dan, if you've been you asked me about that kind of stuff in the past, like where do I find information about that? And it's great that Patrick puts these things together.
Absolutely, it's perfect timing, because it was last week somebody had posted about JavaScript dates, you know, saying how frustrating they are, etc. And I posted a screenshot of just the temporal API saying like, I want to see this. This is like this is going to solve so many headaches. You know, it kind of factors in things like time zones, etc., and just makes it far easier to work with. And then somebody said, "Great, how can I make that happen?" And I was like, well, you can upvote. And I thought, I don't really know where to go for this. You know, where's the link? So this is great. I'm going to go back to that person now. And I think it's just shows that it is something we've got a voice in the conversation. It's not just happening in the background and then we have to live and, you know, die by the decisions. It's like we can actually influence that. So yeah, it's great. I love this.
I mean, I'm pretty sure there's something like that by the W3C, but nobody finds it in the endless wiki that is the W3C by now. So I think this is a great thing to do. My worry about these things, if somebody else does it and not a standards body, is that it can get out of date really soon. And like basically it doesn't get any love and doesn't get any updates. But Patrick is still on the case and he's working on the browser. So I think this is a good resource to come for quite a while. Not sure about the contrast of these links if they're good enough, but that's going to be an interesting accessibility test of that website. Now, this is something I found so pointless and wonderful. It's a cursor animation library using Tailwind, and it basically gives you different cursors. Like you have these fairy dust cursors, and you have canvas cursor, which is like painting things. You've got bubbles. You've got characters, you've got all kind of snowflake cursor, all these bits and bobs that you can do. And it brings me back to the DHTML days when you had like an analog clock following your mouse cursor around and your RAM burning up and your Internet Explorer dying on you because it was cool to see something animated. Just because you can, you might not need, you should, but it's interesting that people use like Tailwind to do something like that. Yeah, I guess if you give us a chance to mess around with things, we mess around with things, right?
Yes.
I wasn't sure if it was like an ironic tool at first. I was sort of, because I went for that fairy dust one and it's such an attack, you know, it's just everywhere. So it sort of looks really nice. And I was like, okay, they spent a long time on this, but then it's, I think it is purely like you're saying, Chris, it's just to show what you can do. Like the blob cursor, I thought was really clever. It's kind of got a lot of dynamically, blobifying it. So I thought that was quite clever, but yeah, just because, as you said, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Meta balls, yeah. And I mean, I love the website of it. That GitHub button drives me crazy.
It does.
Really? Like, okay, I know it. You're there. Fine. This was a game that I found actually quite interesting, where it's about like learning HTML by playing a game. But I was kind of disappointed by it because it actually tells you only about creating divs and putting IDs and classes on it. It takes ages to get to the meat of HTML. But I find the idea of teaching a programming language with a game a really cool idea. And there was code combat in the past, which allowed you to actually move a character through a maze by doing .right, .left, and .2 forward, 2 backwards kind of thing. But I tried to use it earlier and it asked me to sign up first and then to pay. And then like, it seems like these free resources go away really quickly when it comes to like coding resources for kids or for like people that come in sideways, or they're things that that Microsoft or other browser makers do to show what the browser can do and then not maintain for years and years. I mean, there's the Flexbox turtles and these kind of things. So do you think this is a good way to get people started, or do you think it's like it feels too little too late, or like not enough steps in one go?
I think gamification is a nice approach to a lot of people. So obviously this is not a great fit for everyone, but most people I know who like to build something, they're quite playful. And we know that learning works best if you're not punished for making mistakes. So if the game is just like architected in a way that it just like encourages instead of just like punishing you if you make a mistake, then obviously this is good, but I didn't play it, so I can't say.
Yeah, it feels really cool, but it also there's like lots of pop-ups and the editor is like on top of other things, so it's fun, but I find it more frustrating to actually start to learn it. But that may be because I'm not a gamer in normal basis, so that might be the issue there as well.
Could be.
And the last thing I had that a few months ago, and I love that to bits. It's basically just showing you can take one country and then move it on top of another country and see what how much it actually means, like how bigger it is than another country. And it uses the Mercator projection, as you can see here. So as the Earth is round, it's not flat. We checked. It actually
Wait. The Earth isn't flat?
No.
I knew it.
But it's actually really interesting because it shows you just how many African countries like can swallow half of Europe if they really wanted to. And it's just a matter of like, because our world was projected to show England as the most important thing on the planet. That was the projection that is going on there. It actually feels like that all of the other things are not as important, but then you turn the Earth. So if anybody talks about like, who cares about Brazil, that's a great way to actually, that website, to show them like, here's how big that thing really is.
If someone, I do have a question though. So obviously the Mercator projection is just like a reflection of the time that it was just like invented and showing a super Western centric view of the world. Meaning, so everything that is just like close to the poles is just like exaggerated, and everything that is just like in the middle, so at the equator, that is just like smaller than it is in reality. But does someone know the real size of Greenland?
I think it changes a lot, like depending on how hot it gets smaller, and like I don't know.
Yeah,
like,
but I was just like curious if someone very special just like realizes what is the real size of Greenland.
I think I mean we want this we want to promote this on YouTube, so I cannot say all the things I want to say about this, but
So let's
yeah,
take that
there is a certain, I think there's a certain connection of like a country. The bigger it is, that the harder it is to lead in a democratic fashion. Like just geographically, it's a big issue. But I think this is a really cool way to just show people that the world has different sizes than you think it has, and it also is fun to see what you can do with a Maps API. And this one's using Google Maps. And that one, I mean, I worked on Yahoo Maps back then, and I remember the biggest problem that we had was that people wanted to turn the maps, and the map data we had all the labels, like the city names and stuff, as part of the image. So we first had to extract that and turn it with it, and like, it was just because when you turn the map, you would have to read it upside down. But we really are far away from that by now. Jerome, you work worldwide, like with these kind of things, like in terms of like, where is most of the pipes that you're actually dealing with? Is it more northeast stuff, or is it worldwide?
It's all around. We have a huge hub in USA. We have in Canada as well. There's oil industry there, and Europe as well, a big market for us. And we have as well offices there. I have colleagues. My boss is in Germany. I'm in Canada, in Quebec, and lots of colleagues in US, Europe. We have business in Asia as well.
I loved Quebec. It was just, it's bizarre when you speak French and then you get Quebecois. It's like a different story altogether. And
Absolutely.
It's just really, really interesting to see that. I think my favorite story about Quebec was there was a W3C member who's a French guy, and he's a big fan of Quebec. And he's a Jewish guy, and we were there in February for a conference, Confu it was. And February in Quebec is minus 28 degrees centigrade. And basically snow, and like the organizer of the event was a Russian lady, so she had no understanding that you shouldn't walk 3 kilometers to the dinner to actually in a snowstorm. For her it was normal because she lived in Quebec, but everybody else was like, no. But my favorite was about that French friend of mine, because he's like, oh Chris, we got to do something. I got to show you something in Quebec that's just absolutely beautiful, in Montreal. And I'm like, okay. And we walked for like 4 kilometers through snowstorm with minus 20 degrees and something. And then he's like, here's a real proper Jewish bagel bakery. And he showed me some bagels. And I'm like, I live in Finsbury Park in London. I've got 3 of those in my street. I just walked for 3 miles to the snow and sleet to have a bloody bagel. What's going on here? But then I understand poutine, because I mean, you should not eat that, but when you eat it with like minus 28 degrees outside, you burn off the fat within a second, right?
It's a good argument. Yeah. And it's very good too. Yeah. Not for the health, but for the taste. Yeah. Sorry.
Poutine. Louise, do you know what poutine is, or did you have it?
Yeah, that is.
How about you, Dan? You don't get it nice.
No, they've kind of ruined it here. You know, they've kind of taken there's something called, I think it's called Scouse or Scran. I can't remember. No, I think it's Scran up north, and it's kind of like poutine, but a very much like a late night takeaway. You know, cheap and cheerful. As you said, Jerome, not good for your health at all, but it's just very satisfying at 3 a.m. So, but yeah, doesn't compare, I'm sure, to the real thing.
Well, it's a bit like when you're in London, we always measured how drunk you were that night by how many kebabs you had. Like, basically, I'm going to eat that kebab. It's going to make me sober again. Like, so it was a 3 kebab night or a 4 kebab night. And it's
embarrassingly accurate.
Really bizarre. Okay, so we have a time schedule coming up. So I want to thank everybody to be part of this. I want to thank you, Louise, for giving us your insights. And we see you again in July, right? Are you moderating again?
Moderating, I'm not so sure about. Hope someone will just send me an email if required. So, but happy to. Hopefully speaking as well. But yes, I will be there. So I'm looking forward to seeing everyone.
Excellent. Well, great to see you. Any last words for the audience out there? A word of wisdom to anybody?
Happy coding.
Anything from you, Dan?
Go and follow Louisa down here on the I'm right. I'm saying LinkedIn and
Blue Sky.
Blue Sky.
Blue Sky.
Blue Sky.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know
Great
why a
follow.
developer left the company? Because he didn't get a raise.
Bye.
Bye.